Hello guys, gals and gamers, and welcome back to the Breath of the Wild of all YouTube channels. That is because I am blonde, I'm wearing something like blue, and look at that, here are some shots of me looking into nature. That's what Breath of the Wild was about, wasn't it? No? Okay, well, that is actually going to be our topic of the day. Also, before we begin, I would love to remind you guys to please like and subscribe. If we hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year, I will do a very special live stream dissecting the game design behind the most disappointing game I have ever played. Why are my shoulders so stiff? Hopefully that's not going to be an issue in this video. Anyway, back to the actual topic of this video. Breath of the Wild released about 5 years, more than 5 years ago. Oh my god, time goes so fast. I feel old now. The Switch just came out and it's already been like 5 years. Oh god. Anyways, Breath of the Wild did have a massive impact on the industry back when it came out. 2017 altogether was a really good year for video games, and Breath of the Wild easily won like a lot of Game of the Year trophies. It was had critical acclaim all over the board. Everyone loved it, and people were thinking, hey, this is an instant classic. This is gonna be kind of what Ocarina of Time did for the adventure game genre, and Breath of the Wild would do the same for open world genre. But that really didn't happen. It turned out to be a bit less influential than we thought. And there have been, of course, games that have been really heavily inspired by Breath of the Wild, and some that even try to full-on copy it. But if you actually go and play those games, none of them really feel like Breath of the Wild. So I wanted to know what's really going on. Are we taking the wrong lessons from Breath of the Wild? Do people not understand what made the game so special, or could there be something else going on? Why these games that are heavily inspired by Breath of the Wild or even try to copy just don't feel the same, and what makes Breath of the Wild so unique and cool? So I think that would be the good answer to tackle first. What makes Breath of the Wild so good? Now, if you think about it, the first things that you will just think about are just like the open world design. The open world was fun. It was really fun to explore. It was something new for the Zelda series. They have not done like a fully open world, and they just completely perfected it their first time trying out, and it was something really cool. But what really makes the game stand out compared to other open world games is basically its themes of freedom and exploration. Now, of course, when you think about that, the first thing you will think about is the excellently designed open world, and how Nintendo basically designed the open world in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is that they just scattered the world with a lot of interesting things to see. If you go to a tower, one of those towers that in the game, you will see a lot of points of interest, a lot of things that stuck your eye, and you will mark those on map. And when you go to those places, you see even more things that you get interested in and want to check those out later. It's just an endless treasure box of just I want to explore this. There's always new stuff to discover. And that is really cool to have for an open world. But the themes actually do go further than just the open world design. There's also the fact that the story structure is very open. So open, in fact, that you can just go straight to the final boss. The game is like, hey, look at that over there. That's the final boss. If you want, you can just go kill him. It's going to be a bit hard, but you can just go kill him right now, save the word in 30 minutes if you can. It's possible. But it's also interactivity with the world that is really cool and allows for a lot of freedom and exploration on how you go about doing tasks. The best example of this is just the combat. in a regular game, you would like meet a goblin, moblin, or whatever it's called, and just, shoot them with an arrow. And you can do that in Zelda too if you want, but you could also, if you get really bored and creative, you could also wait for the moblins, goblins to fall asleep when it's nighttime, smuggle in a bunch of exploding barrels around them, do like a fun formation, like a smiley face or something phallic, and then get a huge magnetic rock and drop that rock on top of them, causing everything around it to explode. Just like the exploration and just like everything is interacted with each other in a cool way. If you think about something, hey, I wonder if I could do this, you can do that in Breath of the Wild. That is the level of interactivity with the world that a lot of people fell in love with. And it goes further with like how different elements interact with each other. Like if you have a fire rod or any fire weapon, you can lit grass on fire, and that grass that is now on fire creates like an updraft, and you can use that updraft to fly higher and go above a cliff that you couldn't before, and it's just like magnificent. And another thing that Breath of the Wild does well is just like the beginning section of the game, the tutorial section of the game. It gives you like all of the tools you might ever need in the game right in the first 30 minutes. It is really well designed, and it just screams freedom and exploration. After you have gotten all of those tools, go wild. You can go wherever you want. Kill the final boss, go to the desert, go to the birthplace, follow the story if you're boring. You can do whatever you want. And it's just amazing that way. There are also a bunch of like cool mechanics that just allow further exploration and just make the game a lot more fun. First of all, the rune abilities, stasis, cryosis, whatever they were called, stopping time and putting force into an object, or freezing stuff and creating ice pillars, and that is like very cool. And also one of my personal favorite features is just like how you can just stop and view around you at all times. And if you see like a cool tower in the distance, you can be like, hey, I want to mark that. I want to put a marker there on my map so I can go there later. And then when you look at the map, there is a marker on where that tower is on the map. So that is like a really cool feature. So those are just some of the things, the themes basically, why Breath of the Wild excels so much. But when we get into the games that copy Breath of the Wild or are highly influenced by it, something like Genshin Impact, Pokemon Legends Arceus, the upcoming Sonic Frontiers, I think it is called. A lot of games are just called, this is the Breath of the Wild of blah blah blah. And often case it's not really true. Many of the inspiration that we get from Breath of the Wild are just often like very surface level stuff. And that is kind of bothering me. A lot of the time it is just like climbing and gliding that gets added into it, and often just like having an open world in your game now makes people think like, hey, this is the Breath of the Wild or blah blah blah. And I think that is often very misleading and really downplaying on how big of a game Breath of the Wild actually was, and what really makes the game so great. And I get why people do this, why people do this, people reviewing games or just people like in casual conversations do this. That is because Breath of the Wild was just like such a huge cultural impact on like the gaming landscape. It is a very easy reference point. So when you think about an open world done well, you think about Breath of the Wild a lot of the time. And the same thing kind of happened with another really popular series or game. And this happened exactly with like Dark Souls, like 10 years back, whenever the first Dark Souls came. I think it was 2011. So yeah, about uh, 10 years back. Um, Basically, back then, every game was called the Dark Souls of blah blah blah, even if it was like mildly difficult, even though it had nothing to do with Dark Souls. But the thing is, what's different here is that Breath of the Wild didn't like create its own genre in the 5 years that we have had since Breath of the Wild. Meanwhile, Dark Souls kind of did. We have the Souls like. And also, I just want to mention that sometimes when you have just like an indie game with an open world, you have a character with blonde hair and wearing light blue looking into the nature. And that is just basically done for marketing sometimes. Sometimes the games are very like want to be Breath of the Wild and such, but it is also good for marketing to have people think of a really great game when they look at what you have to offer, and then people are more inclined to buy it. But yeah, so what's exactly going on? Why isn't Breath of the Wild being copied more in depth, like getting all of those interactivity features and all of that kind of stuff? Well, the answer to that is unfortunately quite simple, and that is just Breath of the Wild. Everything that it did, it is very hard to copy. And the main thing here is that it just takes a lot of time. And the best example of this is just Breath of the Wild itself. I mean, consider Breath of the Wild 1 and 2. Both of them. They were both delayed for years. And that is for a reason. These games are an enormous task. And I think even in the first one, the team at Nintendo took like about a year to really polish out the physics engine. So there is a lot to consider here. And it is like such a huge task. So I do not blame anyone who wants to make an indie game kind of influenced by Breath of the Wild, because really copying all of those features and all of the interactivity that Breath of the Wild had and did, it's such a huge task and you need a huge team for it. Though I do wish for like more of the high budget games that we get nowadays, a lot of the open world games inspired by Breath of the Wild, like Ubisoft's, the one with the really generic and forgettable name, Phoenix Rising, something like that. That game, the Gods and Monsters game, whatever it was called, the one based in like ancient Greek or something. Those kind of games I do want to see more out of, and just in general, I want to see a lot of like open world games focus on more of these like lessons that we can get from Breath of the Wild and why people loved it. Like having more of these cool interactive things and having the world interact with itself a lot more. Much more, I would love to see that than like focusing on like really high-end graphics. I personally don't care about graphics that much. Of course, performance and everything is important, but you know, games are getting really harder and harder to make. A lot more time needs to be put into games nowadays. So I would just love that time to be, you know, focused a bit better and in service of gameplay. But yeah, that is just my opinion on stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned something new from this video. And I really hope Breath of the Wild 2 makes an even bigger influence on the gaming industry and people will take the correct lessons from it and really make people think about like, hey, this game is such a success and how can we better emulate it in our projects. It would be really great to see, even if it's like a complete copy of Breath of the Wild gameplay wise, it is still such a great gameplay loop and gameplay design to copy that I would still enjoy it. So I would very much like to see more of Breath of the Wild's influence on the gaming industry because it is a really great game. But I have nothing else to say now, so I'll just see you guys next time. Bye bye.